Following that, at 2 o'clock is episode number 1 of We Did OK Kid by Sir Anthony Hopkins. Stay with us for these readings and more.
The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from USA Today for Friday, April 24th. Your reader for this hour is Chet Walczyk. Glad you're here. Let's kick it off with the opening section of USA Today's Weekend Edition and their cover story. And now we're taking a look at nickels. Do nickels still make common sense to use? High minting costs may eventually send them the way of the penny. Last year, the United States Mint pressed the last penny. Penny preservationists warned that the death of the 1-cent coin might see dire consequences: coin shortages at checkout counters, confusion over how to pay bills not ending in 0 or 5, and higher prices as greedy retailers began rounding everything up. Yet, apart from scattered penny shortages, American society appears to have survived the loss of its least valuable coin. Is the nickel next? Well, the question is logical. President Trump killed the penny because the government lost money every time it pressed one. Nickels, well, they're money losers too. In fact, nickels are bigger losers. The Mint spent 3.69 cents making every penny in 2024. For every nickel, the government spent 3.8 cents, a loss of nearly 9 cents per coin. Added up, and the government lost about $18 million minting pennies in 2024. On the nickel, the Mint lost $85 million. The argument for getting rid of the nickel is that it costs more to produce, quite a bit more actually, than its face value. David Smith, an economist at Pepperdine University, said, "Nickels cost more to make because they are larger than pennies and made of costlier stuff, 75% copper and 25% nickel. Pennies look like copper, but are, or were, actually made mostly of zinc." Ridding America of the penny was a no-brainer, said Robert Wapples, an economist at Wake Forest University who long argued for ditching the coin. "We got rid of the penny, and I think we should have," he said, "because the value of the penny was so small, it wasn't really worth our time to use it." America's growing disdain for the penny was unavoidable, Wapples reasons. Decades ago, a penny could purchase a gumball. A penny could purchase many things. Nowadays, the average worker earns about a penny per second. If you spend more than a second with a penny, Wapples said, you've wasted time. Pennies ran short long before the Mint stopped pressing them. One big reason? Americans stopped picking them up. Pennies languished between couch cushions and on closet floors, clogging vacuum cleaners and landfills. Many Americans regard both nickels and pennies as more of a nuisance than currency. The typical household is sitting on $60 to $90 in neglected coins, enough to fill 1 or 2 pint-sized beer mugs, according to the Federal Reserve Bank. Americans throw away millions of dollars in coins every year, literally treating them like trash. But the U.S. Treasury has no public plan to eliminate the nickel, according to Wapples and other coin experts. Americans seem to like nickels more than pennies. Consumers are more likely to carry nickels around in their pockets and return them to stores, keeping them in circulation, Wapples said. The Treasury pressed only 113 million nickels in 2024, but minted 3.2 billion pennies. I don't see any groundswell for getting rid of the nickel, Wapples said. Even so, the nickel's days may be numbered. The death of the penny leaves the nickel as the least valuable coin. Inflation erodes the coin's buying power every year. A stamp hasn't cost a nickel since 1968. A telephone call on a payphone hasn't cost a nickel since 1951. And not that many of us use payphones anymore. With the penny gone, coin experts reason consumers and shopkeepers will lean more heavily on the nickel. The mint will probably end up making more of them, and the losses will mount. One big unknown, following the death of the penny, lay in how retailers might handle the math of rounding off cash transactions. Would they round down, saving consumers a few cents, or round up, earning themselves a few cents? A Common Sense Act, introduced by a bipartisan group of lawmakers in 2025, would round cash transactions to the nearest 5 cents, a potentially fairer solution. That bill has not progressed, but some states are pursuing rounding laws on their own. If the nickel were nixed, the rounding debate would likely rise anew. Let's say something cost $4.91, and you can only pay $5, said Ute Wartenberg Kagan, executive director of the American Numismatic Society. That is a difference of 9 cents. So that is a lot of money if you add it up. In the coin world, Wartenberg Kagan said the Darwinian struggle for survival favors more valuable coins. America turned a profit in 2024 on dimes at $36 million and quarters at $166 million. The mint could profit handsomely from dollar coins, she said, if only more Americans would use them. Through history, she said, all governments have had this problem that it's very cost-effective to make a big piece of money. But what the ordinary people need is small money, and therein lies the conflict. Government researchers have spent years studying ways to reduce the cost of making nickels, presumably by using a cheaper mix of ingredients. The goal, of course, would be to bring production costs below 5 cents per coin. But some observers foresee the nickel's ultimate demise, given the steady march of inflation and the gradual erosion of purchasing power in a 5-cent coin. It will still be quite some time before we eliminate the nickel, said Smith of Pepperdine. How much time? Well, 10 to 15 years, he estimates. My sense is, at some point, it's inevitable, but not necessarily any time soon. And we move on to our next story. In a flurry of votes, Senate spurns measures that would lower costs. How about that? Dateline Washington. In a flurry of rapid-fire votes, most Senate Republicans spurned a group of measures Democrats said would lower everyday costs for Americans, while separately moving to approve billions of dollars for immigration enforcement. In the early hours of April 23rd, Democrats tried to attach a series of amendments to a federal budget blueprint. Their legislation, they said, would have brought down rates for gas, groceries, health care, and school meals with reserve funds, blocking future price hiking bills and reversing food stamp cuts. GOP lawmakers accused their counterparts of orchestrating political stunts and said they were prolonging the record-long shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security. The vote-a-rama was one of the most significant, though futile, pieces of political leverage at Democrats' disposal in a bitter, months-long fight over immigration enforcement. Though the measurements failed to move forward, they represented some politically tough votes for members of the opposing party, especially during a consequential midterm election year that could swing control of Congress. Notably, 2 Republicans are facing re-election in purple states. Senators Susan Collins of Maine and Dan Sullivan of Alaska threw their support behind some efforts to curb out-of-pocket medical expenses and grocery prices. Democrats are standing up for the American people, said Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. At the same time, the GOP cleared a key hurdle toward fully funding DHS again, while directing more money to immigration and customs enforcement and border patrol, both top priorities for Republicans. Our Democratic colleagues have refused to provide funding for the Border Patrol and ICE at a time of great threat to our country, said Senator Lindsey Graham, chair of the Budget Committee. We tried to have some reforms, but they refused. It remains unclear exactly when Congress could move toward fully ending the DHS shutdown, which has dragged on for more than 2 months. Homeland Security Secretary Markwayne Mullins said this week on Fox and Friends that President Trump's directives to reroute funds to paid DHS employees, including airport security workers, would run out of money by the start of May. I've got one payroll left, and there are no more emergency funds, so the president can't do another executive order because there's no more money there, Mullins said. You are listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 11 minutes after the hour. Licensed medical marijuana is reclassified. The Department of Justice is easing federal restrictions on medical marijuana products licensed by states, reclassifying them as less dangerous substances in another big step toward reorienting federal policy around a drug that has been strictly controlled at the federal level for decades. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche signed an order on April 23rd that moves marijuana products approved by the Food and Drug Administration or licensed for medical use by states from Schedule 1, which is the highest level of regulation, to the less strict Schedule 3. This rescheduling action allows for research on the safety and efficacy of this substance, ultimately providing patients with better care and doctors with more reliable information, Blanche said in a statement. The DOJ also is expediting the hearing process to more broadly reclassify marijuana under federal law, following through on President Trump's December 18th executive action aimed at finalizing a reclassification push. The Drug Enforcement Administration will hold an administrative hearing June 29th. The reclassification effort represents a major shift in the federal government's approach to marijuana. Schedule 1 drugs are considered the most dangerous, with the DEA describing them as substances with no medical use and a high potential for abuse. They include heroin, LSD, and ecstasy. The DEA considers Schedule 3 drugs as having a moderate to low potential for physical and psychological dependence. Marijuana isn't legal at the federal level under Schedule 1, but the change makes it easier for the industry to operate and for research to be conducted. The DOJ order creates an expedited registration process for companies with state medical marijuana licenses that enables them to engage in the manufacture, distribution, and or dispensing of marijuana for medical purposes under federal law. The order also has tax benefits for the industry. Marijuana is legal for Marijuana is legal for medical or recreational use in 45 states, and 64% of Americans supported legalization in a Gallup survey from last year, up from 36% 2 decades ago. Support for legalization has dipped recently among Republicans, Gallup found. After Trump issued his December order expediting marijuana's reclassification, a group of 22 Republican senators sent the president a letter stating the drug is harmful to its users and urging him to reconsider. Trump has taken an aggressive approach to drug enforcement during his second term, most notably with military strikes against alleged drug vessels off the coast of Venezuela. His stance on marijuana, well, it has been less restrictive. And continuing with the opening section of USA Today, after deaths of kids, fear of broken heart syndrome. Grieving families face risk of deadly condition. In the early hours of April 19th, A mother in Shreveport was rushed to the hospital after her husband shot her and killed 8 children, according to police. Some of her kids were among those killed. Her family initially kept that news from her, said her cousin, Francine Monroe Brown, because of the risk of a rare and sometimes deadly heart condition that can be triggered by severe emotional stress. Police have not yet identified the mother. She was shot multiple times and was still in the hospital on April 22nd, her family said. Nearly 200,000 adults were hospitalized between 2016 to 2020 for the condition known as broken heart syndrome, says a study published in the Journal of the American Heart Association. It can strike suddenly and cause serious complications, according to the study's author, Dr. Mohammed Reza Movahed, an interventional cardiologist. It is a very serious illness because once you develop this, you can actually die, Movahed said. What is broken heart syndrome? The syndrome occurs when part of the heart stops working because of intense stress, Movahed said. This could happen after someone gets good news, like winning the lottery, or tragic news, like a death in the family. In the Louisiana case, the victims included a 3-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 6-year-old, and 5-year-old. The perpetrator also shot a second woman who survived, and police have not identified her. Physical stress from an asthma attack, severe bleeding, extreme pain, or even waking up from a surgery can also cause the condition, Movahed said. Actually, 1/3 of patients had no triggering factor, he said. They suddenly wake up and have a shortness of breath and then go to the hospital and have broken heart syndrome. If the syndrome affects the lower part of the heart, known as the apex, it can make it look like a balloon, Movahed said. First described in Japan in 1990, it was named Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, after octopus traps that resemble the shape of an effective heart, according to the American Heart Association. It is not entirely clear why stress triggers this condition, Movahed said. The hormones released during stress likely play a role. Meanwhile, experts don't know exactly why the illness strikes different parts of the heart in different people. Unfortunately, this is a disease that we still do not know much about, Movahed said. The symptoms, including shortness of breath and chest pain, can be similar to those of a heart attack. Anyone experiencing such symptoms should go to the hospital, said Dr. Harmony Reynolds, former chair of the American Heart Association's Clinical Cardiology and Stroke Women's Health Science Committee. Heart attacks can also be triggered by stress, and it's impossible for patients to tell the difference, she said. You cannot distinguish it except in a hospital, said Reynolds, a cardiologist professor who leads the Sarah Ross Soter Center for Women's Cardiovascular Research at New York University's Medical School. Well, can you die from it? The syndrome's death rate of 6.5% remained unchanged between 2016 and 2020. Major complications can arise, including cardiogenic shock, a life-threatening condition in which the heart suddenly becomes unable to pump enough blood, Movahed said. Blood clots can form, strokes can occur, the heart muscle could rupture, and the patient could develop an irregular heartbeat, which could lead to cardiac arrest. Congestive heart failure occurred in more than 1/3 of patients in the study. But the syndrome can be treated, and patients recover in the vast majority of cases, Movahed said. Who is most at risk? Postmenopausal women are at the highest risk for this syndrome, and people with mental health conditions might be more vulnerable to it. While the condition is more common among women, Movahed's study found men were nearly twice as likely to die with it. In rare cases, the syndrome can reoccur, he said. There is no proven way to prevent the syndrome, Movahed and Reynolds said, but staying physically healthy and treating anxiety, they said, can help people be better prepared to receive bad news. So there you have it. You can die from a broken heart. So be careful out there. Moving on to another unsettling story. Man accused of killing 3 in Atlanta area shooting dies in jail. The man accused of killing 3 people, including a Department of Homeland Security employee who was out walking her dog in a string of shootings in the Atlanta metro area last week, has died in jail, authorities said. Ololukan Adan Abel, 26, was found unresponsive in his cell the evening of April 21st and, despite life-saving measures, was pronounced dead, the DeKalb County Sheriff's Office said in a statement. He was found at 6:48 p.m., and jail staff notified medical personnel. A cause of death would be determined by the medical examiner's office, the statement said. At this time, there is no indication of criminal activity or foul play, the sheriff's office said. Abel was accused of a string of shootings early on April 13th that left 2 women and a man dead. Authorities said there was no apparent connection between Abel and the victims and that the attacks seemed random. Authorities said the 3 attacks, which happened in Decatur, Brookhaven, and Panthersville in the Atlanta area, happened within a span of several hours. A 48-year-old man, identified by CNN as Tony Matthews, was shot multiple times from the suspect's car just before 2 a.m. About an hour earlier, a woman, identified by CNN as 31-year-old Brianna Weathers, was found with gunshot wounds outside a Checkers in Decatur. Lauren Bullis, the DHS employee, was found dead about 6:50 a.m. in Panthersville with gunshot and stab wounds. Police tracked Abel through traffic cameras that identified the rental car he was using in each attack area. He was stopped by Georgia State Troopers and arrested. Abel was facing charges of 3 counts of malice murder, aggravated assault, and firearms charges as a convicted felon. He also faced federal firearm charges. USA Today reached out to his public defender for comment. A man experiencing homelessness, 35-year-old Damon Marquis Yarns, also faces federal firearms charges for allegedly buying the gun used by Abel, a 9mm pistol. Yarns told investigators he bought the gun for Abel in February, but was not involved in the attacks. Abel was a naturalized U.S. citizen originally from the United Kingdom. He obtained U.S. citizenship in 2022. He served in the Navy, and in 2024 he pleaded guilty to assaulting 2 police officers in California where he was stationed. DHS Secretary called the April 13th attacks acts of pure evil. Lauren approached her work with integrity, thoughtfulness, and a commitment to excellence that strengthened our organization and the communities we serve, DHS said, adding that Bullis served multiple roles at the DHS Office of Inspector General. She brought warmth, kindness, and a genuine sense of care to her colleagues each day. And a couple of quick snippets. Flu shot is now the troops' choice. In the latest change to flu vaccine guidelines under the Trump administration, the U.S. military is dropping its long-standing policy that required service members to get a flu shot. Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth, in a video posted to X, called the change a way to restore freedom and strength to the armed forces and declared the flu mandate was overly broad and not rational. A date for the new policy to take effect was not given. Richard Riccardi of the Center for Health Policy and Media Engagement at the George Washington University called the decision a serious lapse in judgment. Voyager 1 is going. The space probe Voyager 1, 15.7 billion miles away from its home planet and counting, is on life support. NASA engineers have sent commands for it to shut down a science instrument called the Low Energy Charged Particle Experiment, or LESIP, to conserve the dwindling power on the craft, which was launched nearly 49 years ago and is the most distant human-made object in Earth history. Its twin, Voyager 2, also is still operating at 13.2 billion miles away from Earth. NASA engineers now are designing a way to further extend the life of both probes, an ambitious plan they have dubbed the Big Bang. That to me is just amazing. 49 years ago, almost 16 billion miles away, and the thing operates. And it's lucky if we get a refrigerator to last 10 years. Oh well. Apple's Cook will step aside. Tim Cook will step down as CEO of Apple after 15 years of leading the tech giant through an era of explosive growth worldwide that saw its market cap rise by more than 1,000% to almost $4 trillion, second only to NVIDIA. John Ternus, Apple's Senior Vice President of Hardware Engineering, will take over September 1st as Cook becomes Executive Chairman of the Board of Directors. The move comes as Apple celebrates its 50th year. Cook, 65, hailed Ternus as a leader with the mind of an engineer and the soul of an innovator. Ternus, 50, promised to lead with the values and vision that have come to define this special place for half a century. And now let's move over to the USA Today opinion section for Friday, April 24th. And I give you a piece written by Reynold Verret. Mr. Verret is the 6th president and second lay leader of Xavier University of Louisiana, the nation's only Catholic, historically black college or university. And Mr. Verret's piece is entitled, RFK Jr. is almost right on teaching physicians about nutrition. The doctors we train today will spend their careers treating patients whose greatest health threats will not always come from a virus or a gene. They will come from a grocery store, fast food restaurant, a zip code, or a paycheck. Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. has called for medical schools to include at least 40 hours of nutrition education in their curricula, a proposal that has generated controversy in academic medicine. Some of the wariness is warranted. The medical community is right to scrutinize any government pressure on curriculum, as academic freedom is a core principle in higher education. That being said, underneath the politics lies a question worth asking. Why not teach our physicians more about nutrition? This is not a new question. In 1962, the American Medical Association convened a conference after its survey concluded nutrition was receiving inadequate recognition in medical schools. More than a half century later, American medical schools still offer less than 1% of total lecture hours on nutrition and its medical consequences. There is a broad consensus across the medical community that diet is among the most significant drivers of human health and disease. Diet-related chronic diseases has become the leading cause of morbidity and mortality in the United States, including obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and kidney disease. The public health catastrophe is evident in hospital waiting rooms across the country. Health issues do not impact Americans equally. People of color and those living in poverty are disproportionately impacted by diet-related diseases, and the disparity is not accidental. These outcomes result from the social detriments of health, the conditions in which people are born, live, work, and age. The social determinants of health include social factors that affect health, such as poverty, social marginalization, access to health care, and good nutrition. These factors shape health outcomes as powerfully, if not more than, as any other components of the healthcare system. Research consistently shows that social determinants account for roughly 50% of all health outcomes. A physician who understands nutrition science, but not a patient's lived experience, can only help them improve their health to a certain extent. Food insecurity, food deserts, and structural inequities do not fall evenly across our society. They particularly impact communities of color who continue to experience cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, and cancer at higher rates than their white peers. A 2022 National Institute of Health study found that high poverty, non-white, particularly black neighborhoods have the least access to supermarkets with fresh foods. Health outcomes are not coincidences. They are the consequences of social structures. The medical community has begun to connect these dots. An expert-backed framework of competencies for physicians in training has underscored the importance of screening for food insecurity, which essentially asks whether patients have consistent access to nutritious food. 40 hours of nutrition science without attention to the social determinants of health risk trains physicians to prescribe salads in communities that don't have fresh food in their grocery stores. At Xavier University of Louisiana, one of the nation's leading producers of black physicians, understanding the social determinants of health is fundamental to who we are and what we do. Xavier approaches health education holistically. Our Department of Public Health Sciences was recognized by the U.S. Department of Education as a standout program preparing students for impactful careers in public health. Our College of Pharmacy's Health Sciences program explicitly educates to find solutions for health disparities. Our students are trained to see not only the patient in front of them, but also the social determinants of health that have shaped their lives. Xavier University also is developing the Xavier Ochsner College of Medicine, focused on training the next generation of physician leaders committed to health equity and reimagination of health care. Physicians with the knowledge and skills to address nutrition-related health issues and the social determinants of health. The growing consensus that nutrition belongs in medical education is valuable, but that consensus will only translate into healthier communities if paired with an equally serious commitment to understanding why so many Americans cannot access nutritious foods that support good health in the first place. Xavier University, shaped by a mission of justice and humanity, has long held that well-being arises from healthy communities. We have embedded the social determinants of health throughout our health science and pre-medical curriculum because we know, as research confirms, that where and how patients live shape their health as much as the care they receive. Our call to academic institutions and to Secretary Kennedy is this: nutrition education and the social determinants of healthcare are not separate conversations. They are one conversation, and they belong at the center of every medical curriculum in America. You are listening to reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 34 minutes after the hour, and we turn to the money section for Friday, April 24th. But as is USA Today's tendency, the money section on Fridays is really travel and tourism. So we proceed with their feature story, Magic Loop. Disney parks still have a chokehold on fans. Walking into Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom or Disneyland Park, there's a moment when guests turn the corner in Main Street, USA and see the castle. For first-time guests, it's that pinch-me moment of finally arriving. But for many long-time guests, it feels like something else. Coming home. You feel this special feeling that you don't feel anywhere else but in the parks. And you just want to go back to get that feeling again, said Miriam Estrella, a Disney World annual pass holder and Florida-based content creator with more than 3 million followers across her social media platforms. Disney reported a record quarterly revenue of $10 billion for its experiences division, which includes parks, with domestic park attendance up 1% and per capita spending up 4% for the first quarter of 2026. Here's what keeps many Disney fans coming back for more. Feeling like a kid again. Estrella didn't grow up visiting the parks, but like many kids around the world, she still grew up with Disney. In Canada, my mom showed me the movies, and I would watch the Disney Channel, ABC, every Saturday morning at 10 a.m., she said. She wanted to visit Disney World, but recalled it being pricey, even after her family moved from Montreal to Orlando. Finally, when I was an adult and I got to go to the park, I was like, my gosh, I feel like a kid again. It brought back the memories, and it was so nostalgic. And you got all these warm, sweet, fuzzy feelings in your belly, Estrella said. She still gets that feeling when she visits, especially when she sees her favorite character, Winnie the Pooh. Meeting him, you forget that you're an adult and you're hugging a character. It feels like you're 5 years old again, Estrella said. It's like your inner child is literally coming out. That's just what Walt Disney wanted. When he opened Disneyland 70 years ago, he said, "Here, age relives fond memories of the past, and here youth may savor the challenge and promise of the future." Lest present-day guests forget, plaques near the entrance to Main Street, USA declare, "Here you leave today and enter the world of yesterday, tomorrow, and fantasy." Disney parks invite guests to let go of their worries and let their guard down. It is emotionally safe and a space that you understand, said A.J. Wolf, author of the best-selling book Disney Adults, exploring and falling in love with the magical subculture, and owner of the fan sites Disney Food Block and alleyears.net. It's also physically safe, Wolf added. A lot of people that I spoke to for my book who are maybe part of a marginalized community or who have food allergies, things like that, those people feel very safe going to Disney World because they know they're not going to be judged. They know that Disney has plenty of policies in place to protect them and keep them safe. And that's something that people are looking for right now in the world as well. Estrella, whose partner has celiac disease and can't have gluten, echoed the appreciation for food safety. Disney is one of the few places where we can go and she can eat. An allergen chef will come in and talk to her, Estrella said. That feeling of being taken care of with allergies is so special. And very few places other than Disney do it right and make you feel safe and actually give you food that tastes good and not just like a bland carrot. The parks are also welcoming places to try things that may be new to you, whether it's a new flavor or learning about different cultures. Disneyland hosts seasonal festivities celebrating Lunar New Year, Dia de los Muertos, and other traditions throughout the year. Disney World's Epcot spotlights various countries all year round. It also lets you make new memories. Airline pilot and Disney World and Disneyland Paris annual pass holder Brent Hopper vividly remembers exploring Epcot with his parents as a kid. He loved just the imagination of things, just kind of taking me to this fantasy world. Even though they lived in Detroit, Hopper and his family visited the Orlando area often, and he lives there now. In many ways, Hopper grew up at the parks and has continued making new memories along the way, working at Disney World's Splash Mountain after college, getting married at the resort, and taking his family on various Disney vacations. I remember taking my son on Peter Pan for the first time, and he didn't understand how the ride vehicle was flying, he said, recalling having that same wonder as a child and still being fascinated by Disney Imagineering through the eyes and the lens of a kid. It's pure magic, he said. Over the years, he has used Epcot's World Showcase and Disney parks worldwide to introduce his kids to other cultures and real-life destinations. His two youngest kids are still little, but he's taken his teens on two 12-park, 12-day challenges, visiting all of Disney parks worldwide in 12 days with his airline perks. I wanted to inspire my kids to explore the world, and it's kind of cool that my job enables me to go and do that, Hopper said. It's opened my eyes and my kids to experiences. While each Disney resort is unique, he said, visiting parks abroad, it kind of feels like home. Like families who watch football or go fishing together, those who enjoy parks together perpetuate the cycle of fandom. But Estrella, who is child-free, notes, it's special with kids, special without it. Disney actively invests in maintaining and growing its fan base, constantly rolling out new foods, merchandise, shows, and attractions to keep guests coming. Disney is very, very good at walking this tightrope between what people love and what people fell in love with the last time they were at Disney, and what's going to make the new crop of Disney fans fall in love with Disney, Wolf said. Walt is quoted as saying, "Disneyland will never be finished," meaning we are going to change as the fans change, as the zeitgeist changes. Its experience division is in the middle of a $60 billion decade-long expansion that will include new lands, new cruises, and more. There's a whole new park planned for Abu Dhabi. Hopper sometimes wishes there weren't quite so many changes. There's certain aspects of Disney that I'm like, man, I wish they'd bring more of the magic back, he said, waxing nostalgic over retired attractions like Horizons and Maelstrom, the original Journey to Imagination, and Shuttered Wonders of Life Pavilion. Still, he adds, I love Disney. That love is the biggest reason fans keep coming back. You are listening to reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and the time is 43 minutes after the hour. And we continue. Cruising Altitude, a piece written by USA Today travel columnist Zach Wichter. Calls on flights could be common. British Airways allows passengers video calls. British Airways started allowing passengers to make video calls during flights on March 19th. Not all progress is good, readers. To be clear, I don't fault British Airways for doing this. Airlines need to give passengers the amenities they want, and if technology allows for this level of onboard connectivity, there's no reason for companies to withhold. But, more broadly, this is a sad move for all of us. Not just because I still think of airplanes as one of the last places where a person can truly disconnect for a few hours, but also because I'm not confident that people will be respectful about it. I live in New York City, and as it is, I see plenty of people making FaceTime calls on public transit or in other shared spaces without their headphones. I think I would find it even more annoying if I were stuck in a metal tube with them for hours on end. British Airways is among the first airlines to officially introduce this capability, and I am sure it's just the start of a shift in what flights could be like going forward. As British Airways rolls out high bandwidth Starlink Wi-Fi across its fleet, it will allow passengers to use their in-flight connection to make voice and video calls over the internet. The airline asks that passengers use headphones and keep their voices low while speaking, but I am not convinced this will work on every flight. At least one etiquette expert shares my concern. In my experience as a human and as someone who lives and breathes etiquette crimes all day long, I am nervous. Nick Layton, an etiquette expert and co-host of the Were You Raised by Wolves podcast, told me, I've been on flights where people are playing Candy Crush at full blast for 8 hours. It puts flight attendants in a very awkward position. Like Layton, I'm not convinced a gentle reminder will be enough to keep the noise down. Do U.S. airlines allow in-flight phone calls? For now, United States Airlines generally prohibit calls during flights, but that could change. According to the Federal Aviation Administration, phone calls using a cell network are prohibited by the Federal Communications Commission during flights, but there is no regulation explicitly prohibiting calls over Wi-Fi. It's down to individual airline policies, and as more U.S. carriers roll out free, high-speed internet on board, it feels like only a matter of time before onboard phone calls become more commonplace here too. United Airlines, like British Airways, is rolling out Starlink across its fleet, so passengers will have the technical capability to make Wi-Fi calls on United flights soon. For now, though, the airline told me it's not making any changes to its onboard call policy. American Airlines, which is British Airways' largest partner in the United States, is also working on rolling out free Wi-Fi to its A-Advantage loyalty program members. A spokesman for the airline told me they did not have a comment when I asked if they would follow their partner's lead when it comes to onboard calls. So far, other U.S. carriers have not announced plans to introduce onboard calling, but it would be a throwback if they did, in a way. Many planes historically had Airphone on board, a seatback device that let passengers make calls to contacts on the ground during their flights. But, Layton pointed out, those were not widely used. The only reason Airphone worked 20 years ago is that it was so expensive, and no one used it, he said. With cheap, high-quality connections, a lot more people could be poised to make calls from 35,000 feet. We've all been on Amtrak where people are making phone calls the entire time. We know how this is going to go, Layton said. For the sake of my sanity, I hope that travelers do not take advantage of in-flight Wi-Fi calling capability, but I'm not optimistic. If you do need to make a brief call during your flight, Layton recommends getting up and going to the galley so other passengers don't need to overhear your conversation. Or, he said, maybe airlines could sacrifice a bathroom to make a phone booth on board. Beyond that, he said, there could be another old-school solution to contain the noise. A phone call section, like an old smoking section, Layton said. Possibly without meaning to, he made another great point. We should all probably work to be less addicted to our phones. I can't imagine a worse thing than being trapped on a 6-hour flight with somebody yapping away on a phone the entire time. Anyway, you are listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, where the time comes in at 50 minutes after the hour. United States risks losing rank as top tourism spot. Despite more people taking international trips globally, the United States is losing ground as a top destination, according to new data. Last year was one of the best years for the travel and tourism sector, with a 4.1% increase in gross domestic product growth, according to the World Travel and Tourism Council's latest economic impact travel research sponsored by Chase Travel. There were 80 million more international travelers in 2025 than 2024, but many of them are skipping the United States for other locales. In 2025, North America was the slowest growing market globally, with the United States rising by less than 1%, research found. Meanwhile, the Asia-Pacific region skyrocketed by 8.2% in 2025. The U.S. is losing market share, and China could replace it as the world's largest tourism market within 4 years if it continues its own rapid growth. Gloria Guevara, president and CEO of WTTC, told USA Today. The U.S. can maintain its leading position if it increases investment and overseas promotion, rebuilds international demand, and changes perceptions with a warmer welcome at border entry points. In early 2025, increased security at U.S. borders, along with reports of detainments and deportations, created a chilling effect that made international visitors rethink trips to the United States. According to foreign arrival numbers comparing March 2024 to 25. From the Department of Commerce's National Travel and Tourism Office, Germany, the United Kingdom, Denmark, and Finland also warned their citizens about the potential risks of trying to enter the United States. Recent data by the NTTO also showed a 20% decline in Canadian travelers, or 4.2 million fewer visitors, once a major market for the United States. Previous USA Today reporting found several reasons why international travelers are skipping the United States. Among them are fears of border detainment and gun violence. The drop in international visitors could spell trouble for the U.S. economy, as travel is one of the country's largest export services. Travel plays a vital role in the U.S. economy. In 2025, visitor spending supported 15 million U.S. jobs and generated a record-setting $3 trillion in economic output, according to a new report from the U.S. Travel Association. The figure represents 2.4% of the national GDP. Domestic travel made up the majority of that revenue, representing 87% of U.S. travel spending in 2025, the report found. Both domestic leisure and business travel remain strong. Meanwhile, international visitors declined by 2.3%, opting for elsewhere instead. Americans are the heart of the travel economy, but overseas travelers, who spend up to 8 times more per trip, are our most valuable growth opportunity, U.S. Travel Association President and CEO Jeff Freeman said in a statement. Yet, we are the only major destination in the world losing visitors. That is a problem we need to solve. WTTC's findings were similar. Domestic visitor spending last year was 14.3% higher than pre-pandemic levels, though international visitor spending dropped by 4.6%. But there's a chance for the United States to reestablish its appeal as a global destination, with the country co-hosting the 2026 World Cup, which is estimated to bring 1.24 million international visitors. The U.S. is in a strong position to reverse perceptions, invest more in overseas tourism promotion of the country, and roll out its advanced global entry system more widely, Guevara explained. You are listening to reading of articles and features from USA Today, for Friday, April 24th on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We will return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for this hour has been me, Chet Walczyk. I was glad you were able to join us. I hope you have a great weekend, and we look forward to catching up with you the next time around. Take care.
continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of the USA Today. Your reader for this hour is Linda Lover. Streep Hathaway dress up a media message in Prada. This is a fun fashion movie. There's a lot of music, there's a lot of laughs. Streep, 76, says with a grin, seated in a downtown hotel that's been chicly transformed into Miranda's Runway magazine office. But at the film's core, it's written on the shifting sands of the reality of being alive right now, she adds. In every business, in every outlet, in every enterprise, people are uncertain about where it's all going. For Hathaway, 43, it was crucial not to just cash in on the oft-quoted original, which earned Streep a Best Actress Oscar nomination for her deceptively nuanced portrayal of a formidable editor-in-chief. We talked a lot about how we didn't want to come back and just make a nostalgic movie in order for us to pick up these characters again, Hathaway says. The legacy of the first one is still going strong. We didn't have to do this. We needed a great story, and we needed something that felt urgent and very human. In the first Devil Wears Prada, the naive and ordinary Andy scores a job at Runway as the new assistant to Miranda, an Anna Wintour-esque boss whose Ice Queen persona melts over the course of the film. Andy quickly is swept up in the business of high fashion, but fearing that she's lost herself, eventually decides to quit. Directed by David Frankel, son of famed New York Times editor Max Frankel, the sequel picks up with Andy as an award-winning reporter who lands back at Runway after she and many others are suddenly laid off from a New York newspaper. Now the magazine's features editor, Andy struggles to create worthwhile journalism as a revolving door of media executives demand more page views, more exclusives, more ad dollars, and more social content. It is a love letter to journalists, Hathaway says. There are so many aspects of our society that are under siege right now, and one of the ones that frighten us the most is the way journalism is under siege and what's happening to truth. So it's very important to be on the right side of history when it comes to this particular issue. Frankly, the movie should come with a trigger warning for journalists who are seeing their jobs slashed at increasingly alarming rates as media companies are stripped for parts. Miranda's right-hand man, Nigel, played by Stanley Tucci, bemoans that there's no budget left for sophisticated fashion photo spreads, and how Runway has been reduced to pithy videos that people watch on the toilet. Andy is forced to write branded, sponsored stories for former colleague Emily, played by Emily Blunt, who works at Dior. And when a Broye CEO, BJ Novak, takes charge of Runway, the entire features section faces the chopping block. We can't keep sucking the soul out of everything, gutting it, and repackaging it, Andy laments through tears. The future is coming for all of us, and maybe we're just meant to be subsumed or washed away, Frankel says, paraphrasing a Jeff Bezos-style billionaire played by Justin Theroux. I don't remember a time in culture where it felt like things were changing so dramatically, and it was such a mystery. All these characters are living in a world of uncertainty, and that's where we are right now. But there are glimmers of hope. The sequel adds a slew of young Runway assistants played by Simone Ashley from Bridgerton, Caleb Heron from Pizza Movie, and Helen J. Shen from Maybe Happy Ending. Andy and Nigel initially dismissed their Gen Z colleagues as inexperienced, but Shen's go-getter, Jin, shows Andy that you can create healthy boundaries around your boss and the workplace, and that technology isn't always something to be feared. Underestimation does not faze Jin at all, Shen says. She comes up with solutions that may seem quite out of the box to Andy, but sometimes you need to see things from a fresh perspective. Hathaway and Streep pitched Devil Wears Prada 3. After the sequel's global promotional tour, Streep says the filmmakers are planning to auction off the costumes, with proceeds going to a nonprofit that supports press freedom. We thought, we're a fashion movie, Streep says. Let's take all these clothes and we'll throw money at the Committee to Protect Journalists. So that's where that's going. Boom. Prada 2 is a rare sequel outing from Oscar winners Streep and Hathaway, both of whom have been extremely selective about the franchises they sign on to. Aside from Miranda, Streep has only ever reprised one other film character, Donna Sheridan, in the Mamma Mia movies. Hathaway, meanwhile, has only done sequels to The Princess Diaries and Alice in Wonderland. The first Prada ended with Andy throwing her phone into a fountain, fed up with the cutthroat, backstabbing world of designer fashion. It's open-ended, Streep says. You want to see where that goes. You want to see what she does in her life. I haven't made a lot of movies that are not finite. They finish when they finish. They don't feel like, I can't wait to see what Julia Child does next. But we want to. Would you? Hathaway exclaims, lighting up at the possibility of a Julie and Julia follow-up. Streep is holding out for a third Mamma Mia, despite the surprising revelation that her character died. You think that Donna died, but maybe she didn't. I'm just saying, Streep teases. The Hollywood icon would also be game to team up with Hathaway for a movie musical at some point. Maybe that's the third one, Hathaway jokes. The Devil Wears Prada sings. Melton is vocal about his mom's debut. Charles Melton didn't need to look far to find someone to voice his mother during a key phone call scene on Beef, Season 2. The Riverdale actor recruited his mother, Sukyoung Melton, for the role. When Melton, 35, speaks Korean on his iPhone as Austin Davis in the critically acclaimed Netflix drama, all 8 episodes are streaming, is Sukyoung on the other line in her Hollywood debut. That's my mother, Melton tells USA Today proudly, adding a playful warning to casting agents that the Hollywood newbie won't audition for future parts. She's offer only, just in case, for anyone that sees this. Beef creator and showrunner Lee Sung-jin aims to incorporate real portions of his actors' lives in his TV stories. So when the scene arose with Austin on the phone with his mom, Melton thought speaking to the real thing would lend some authenticity. Lee concurred. Seong was excited about the big moment back home in Kansas, even if her voice wasn't initially supposed to be used in the series. She had just finished tea time with the Korean ladies at church, and she got home early. She was just waiting on the phone, Melton says, and then she would hear action. We just had so much fun. Lee stepped up the performance a level, flying Sukyoung to Los Angeles to record her voice part in the studio. All of those phone calls are from Charles's mom in the ADR booth, Lee says, who adds that the expense was worth it. She crushed it. Melton was the first piece of Beef, Season 2. Lee worked hard to bring Charles Melton on board the project after seeing the rising star in the acclaimed role of Jo Yu in 2023's May December, co-starring Julianne Moore and Natalie Portman. The Beef creator finagled a seat next to Melton at a celebratory film awards dinner and went right into his pitch for his TV series at the table. I pulled out my PowerPoint slides with his picture in all of them and in the storyboards, Lee says, and I pitched him all of Season 2 right there. By the second appetizer, Melton had said yes. Melton stars opposite Kaylee Spaney as Ashley, Austin's young love and fellow country club employee, as the pair face off against married club managers played by Carey Mulligan and Oscar Isaac. The younger generation of Beef bonded off camera. We went to a Kansas City Chiefs football game, Melton says of his Springfield, Missouri-raised co-star Spaney. It was her family and my family. We're homies. Melton brought his mom to Beef premiere. Melton is close to his mother, who was born and raised in South Korea and immigrated to the United States in 1990 after marrying U.S. Army officer Phil Melton. The military family moved often, including to Manhattan, Kansas, where Melton went to high school and later played football for Kansas State University. Fittingly, Austin is a former college football star in Beef. Melton is protective of his personal life and marriage to filmmaker and director Camille Summers Valley. The couple welcomed their first child together in March, with Melton posting photos on Instagram showing the brood, stating, "Our family." However, Melton loves publicly showing off his mom, bringing her to the 2024 Golden Globes, where he was nominated for his May-December performance. Of course, the first-time actress was Melton's date to the Beef Season 2 Los Angeles premiere April 8th. But Suk-young is not quite ready for membership in the Screen Actors Guild despite the part. "I said, don't get too excited," Melton says. "She has to do 1 or 2 more jobs before they let her get a SAG," which is the membership card. Hulk Hogan owns up to one big mistake. Hulkamania is taking over Netflix. Hulk Hogan, Real American, now streaming, reveals how a young man born Terry Gene Bollea, dogged by his dad for not being as strong as his older brother, became a World Wrestling Entertainment, the WWE, Hall of Famer and helped make the sport what it is today. In conversations captured last year before his death on July 24th, Hogan walks viewers through the journey of his career, which began under the guise of the masked Super Destroyer. The 4-part docuseries continues up until Hogan's death from a heart attack at age 71. Hogan's son Nicholas Bollea, known professionally as Nick Hogan, says in the docuseries that his dad faced complications following a neck surgery before his death. "It was about 2.5 months that we were in and out of hospitals, but he still showed so much resilience and strength in those moments." Nick's mother, Linda, Hogan's first wife, participated in the film, speaking about the excitement of their love story before it fizzled. Hogan's manager, James "Jimmy" Hart, and fellow wrestlers Bret Hart and Jesse Ventura discuss Hogan's decades-long career. Even President Donald Trump sat for an interview at the request of Hogan. "Wrestling is a mimicking of life," Trump says. "There's a winner and a loser, but Hulk was really at the top of the game." Hogan's legacy, while premier, is far from pristine. The wrestler admitted to using steroids and uttering offensive racial slurs, as covered in the docuseries. Terry Bollea was not the greatest person of all time, Hogan concedes. "The character was impeccable, even though I wasn't. I just loved the greatness of the character." Here are the notable moments from Real American on Netflix. First of all, Hogan admits to steroid use after denying it for years. Hogan often attributed his physique to a regimen of training, saying his prayers and taking vitamins. He failed to mention one thing that allowed him to balloon to 300-plus pounds: steroids. Hogan says he began using steroids a couple of years after graduating from high school in 1971. Back then, the mindset was steroids were safer than sugar, Hogan says. Administering steroids for non-medical use was outlawed in 1988. But Hogan continued using them. His resilience came to light when Dr. George Zahorian, charged with giving steroids to wrestlers in 1991, named Hogan as a recipient. Hogan, aware he had to do something, appeared on the Arsenio Hall show to deny the story. "Of course, I lied to him," Hogan says in the docuseries. "It's something that would be classified in the mistake category. If I could relive it, I wouldn't do it again." Hogan admitted to using steroids in 1994. At the time, Vince McMahon, who purchased the former World Wrestling Federation, the WWF, from his dad in 1982, stood accused of conspiring to distribute steroids. "I said he never sold me steroids," Hogan says. "I told the judge it was just like a carton of cigarettes. Hey, give me a carton of cigarettes, and next time I get one, I'll pay you back. McMahon was acquitted. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour. Hogan addresses infamous O.J. Simpson quote. Linda says she learned Hogan had been unfaithful when their housekeeper discovered an earring in their bed that didn't belong to her. Hogan had an affair with Christine Plant, a friend of his daughter, Brooke, who does not participate in the docuseries. Linda filed for divorce in 2007, and the pair endured an acrimonious split, which Hogan spoke about in a 2009 interview with Rolling Stone. I could have turned everything into a crime scene, like O.J. cutting everybody's throat, Hogan told the outlet. You live half a mile from the 20,000 square foot home you can't go to anymore. You're driving through downtown Clearwater and see a 19-year-old boy driving your Escalade, and you know that a 19-year-old boy is sleeping in your bed with your wife. I totally understand O.J. I get it. In '95, Simpson stood accused in the trial of the century of murdering his ex-wife Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman. Both were fatally stabbed on June 12, 1994. Though a jury found Simpson not guilty, some feel he is responsible for their deaths. I spent 3 days with Rolling Stone, Hogan says in the docuseries, believing he and the writer had become friends. All of a sudden, we're sitting on my back porch and drinking beer on the beach and had a little buzz on, and he asked me about O.J. Simpson. I said, wow, brother, you know I've been that jealous and that mad at a girl that I completely understand how he flipped out. But I would never do that. I would never go there. Hogan says amid the backlash, he started drinking and started eating pills. And I just went down this rabbit hole for a couple of days. And the next thing I know, I'm sitting in front of my bathroom with a gun in my mouth, not knowing what I was doing. Hogan says he gave Linda 70% of everything to get rid of her and was financially wiped after their divorce. Hogan wins suit against Gawker over sex tape. In 2012, celebrity-focused media company Gawker published part of a sex tape from 2007 that featured Hogan and Heather Clem, wife at the time of Hogan's friend Todd Clem, known as Bubba the Love Sponge. When asked to take the tape down, Gawker refused, citing the First Amendment. Hogan sued. Hogan was horrified at the idea of a little kid Googling him and seeing that, attorney Ken Turkle, who represented Hogan in the lawsuit, says in the docuseries. In March 2016, a jury awarded Hogan a $140 million judgment, which caused the company to shutter. Hogan and Gawker settled for $31 million months later in November 2016. Hogan expresses regret over racial slurs. The Gawker lawsuit wasn't a complete victory for Hogan. A transcript of the tape released in 2015 revealed he used a racial slur during the encounter. Hogan apologized at the time and was fired by WWE. I'm a person that got very mad about a personal situation, Hogan says in the show. I used a word. Yeah, I regret it, because even under that heavy, crazy fire, I should have remained still and kept my mouth shut. But what I said resonates and has an echo effect. It keeps vibrating for years. Hogan spoke of his temper earlier in the docuseries when he recalled a conversation with McMahon. When Hogan triumphed over Yokozuna in 1993 at WrestleMania 9, Hogan wondered what the future held, while McMahon believed his days were numbered. Hogan remembers he just went nuts on a call with McMahon. You name it, every bad name that you could say that would get you canceled. Trump discusses friendship with very controversial Hogan. At the top of his interview, Trump encourages the crew to begin, if they're ready, as he has a big Russia meeting going on. While the president's appearance may be surprising, he and Hogan became friends after meeting in the 80s and share a commonality, Trump says. The Hulk was always very controversial, and that's okay, he says. I'm fairly controversial. I think I've become less controversial over the years, but I'm fairly controversial too. Hogan admires Trump's work ethic. Trump compliments Hogan's showmanship, loyalty, and their good chemistry. Hogan says he previously avoided politics so as not to alienate any of his fans, but quietly voted for Trump in 2016 and 2020. He planned to do the same in 2024, but after the assassination attempt that summer, Hogan could no longer remain silent. Days later at the Republican National Convention, Hogan enthusiastically endorsed Trump as if he were promoting a wrestling match. He even ripped his shirt to reveal a Trump Vans tee underneath. "He's my friend," Hogan explains. "A lot of people would say I'm completely crazy, but I know the person. I know him very well. I'm not saying I agree with everything he does, but at least he's honest about who he is." Her mobility scooter was damaged. Then the airline went silent. When Debbie Coleman saw her mobility scooter on the baggage carousel in Orlando, Florida on March 5th, she knew something was wrong. For starters, the scooter should have been returned to her at the specialty baggage counter or the oversized luggage claim instead. Once Coleman realized her mobility device had been seriously damaged on her trip from Los Angeles, she got stuck in a vortex of airline customer service dead ends while trying to get it repaired. I've talked to Orlando. I talked to their main office in Atlanta. I've asked for supervisors. I've always been told someone would call me back, and they don't, Coleman told USA Today. It's been over 11 times now that I've contacted someone. I was told every time that we're escalating this to your claims manager, and every time I was told someone would call me back in 24 to 72 hours, and so far, no one has called. Coleman, 65, said there was damage to various parts of her scooter when she received it, and the inside of its transport case was wet when it arrived at her final destination of Orlando. The special education teacher was on the trip for some meetings and to visit Disney World. Coleman said that she was given a rental scooter while she was away. When she returned home to Los Angeles, however, Coleman was told her complaint against Delta Airlines had been closed and that she would not be compensated for the repairs or for further loaner expenses. When I called my repair person here to confirm that it arrived, they told me the claim had been denied and it was closed, she said. Delta Airlines acknowledged the initial confusion and said that its initial investigation was unable to prove that the scooter had been damaged while the airline was handling it. After being contacted by USA Today, Delta ultimately covered repairs for the scooter. We sincerely apologize for the delay in repairs to Ms. Coleman's scooter. Her experience did not meet our standard of care, which is why we expedited and completed the repairs and promptly contacted her to apologize, Delta said in a statement. For Coleman, who has rheumatoid arthritis and spinal stenosis and relies on her scooter to comfortably get around, the frustration of being brushed off for more than a month was almost as bad as the damage itself. That was really poor customer service. The feeling that I was constantly being ignored needs to change, she said. At least if they're going to deny it, they need to be able to communicate that to me and not just leave me hanging for so long and give me nothing. On April 10th, more than a month after it was first damaged, Coleman was able to confirm that her scooter had been repaired, but she said airlines need to be more accountable. It's bad enough for me, but what people who have even more severe disabilities must go through, and being a special education teacher makes me especially sensitive to that. I keep thinking, how can this happen? She said. How common is airline wheelchair damage? U.S. Airlines actually showed significant improvement in 2025 compared with 2024 in terms of wheelchair damage rates, but there's still work to be done. According to the Department of Transportation, The 10 largest U.S. airlines and their subsidiaries carried 907,259 wheelchairs and other mobility devices in 2025, and the DOT received 9,910 reports of mishandling, a rate of 1.09%. For comparison, carriers mishandled 1.26% of the mobility devices they transported in 2024. MSC Cruises is launching a new private island in 2028. MSC Cruises Island in the Bahamas is getting a new next-door neighbor. The cruise line has revealed a first look at Sandy Cay, a new private island adjacent to Ocean Cay MSC Marine Reserve. The destination will welcome guests from both MSC and Explora. Journeys beginning in 2028. Both cruise lines are part of the MSC Group. Lynn Torrent, president of MSC Cruises North America, said the expansion was driven by consistently strong guest satisfaction and demand at Ocean Cay. The existing island features beach access, food and drinks, shore excursions, and is also the site of scientific work aimed at addressing climate change's impacts on marine habitats. The success of the success of Ocean Cay helped validate our long-term vision for private destinations and ultimately led to the development of Sandy Cay, Torrance said, told USA Today. So, as MSC Cruises continues to grow in North America and we continue to increase capacity from U.S. home ports, adding Sandy Cay allows us to expand capacity while offering guests more variety and more tailored experiences in line with the brand. Surrounded by the same turquoise waters as its predecessor, the island offers a more secluded, elemental escape, according to a news release. Details on specific amenities are still to be announced. It'll have sort of its own soul and DNA, where elegance is fused with the authentic spirit of the Bahamas, preserving that very relaxed, genuine atmosphere that our guests love about Ocean Cay, but really an extension of that, Torrance said. CTL Maritime, a subsidiary of the MSC Group, announced this month that it will acquire and develop part of the Grand Lucayan Resort on Grand Bahama into a beach club for MSC and Explora Journeys passengers. MSC also shared planned enhancements to Ocean Cay in January, including new dining options, an extended pier to accommodate 2 ships at once, an adults-only beach, hands-on marine conservation experiences for guests, and more. How was your day? Josh Groban. Josh Groban may just be the happiest man on earth. The You Raise Me Up singer revealed he and English theater actress Natalie McQueen are engaged after a magical proposal at Disneyland. My best friend said yes. Sharing his life with you is my happiest place, Groban, 45, wrote on Instagram on April 21st, captioning a carousel of photos of the proposal, which showed them embracing in front of Snow White's wishing well and the King Arthur carousel. The last shot depicts a cake with congratulations written in icing and the couple's clasped hands. McQueen's with a shiny new addition. The pair revealed their relationship on Instagram on Valentine's Day in 2023. And it's your birthday, so who's celebrating today along with you? Actor Shirley MacLaine turns 92, actor-singer Barbra Streisand, 84. Actor-playwright Eric Bogosian is 73, and actor Michael O'Keefe is 71. Actor Glenn Marshower, 67. Actor-comedian Cedric the Entertainer, 62. Actor Jimon Hansu, 62. Drummer Aaron Comes of the Spin Doctors, 58. Actor Aidan Gillen, 58. Actor Melinda Clark, 57. Producer-writer Damon Lindelof, 53. Actor Rebecca Mader, 49. Singer TV host Kelly Clarkson, 44. Singer Carly Pierce, 36. And actor Jack Quaid, 34. Happy birthday to them all. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 30 minutes after the hour. Okay, and now for some sports news. Everyday job. Brave star Matt Olson's Ironman streak is a modern MLB marvel. Unlike some of his Major League Baseball peers, Matt Olson does not drain his blood, sip mountain spring water from a green glass bottle to avoid microplastics, nor measure every carbohydrate before sating his hunger. No, I'm not the guy, he tells USA Today Sports, who's got a chef at home. Yet somehow Olson has outlasted them all. In this era of load management and general soreness, the Atlanta Braves first baseman has not missed a game in nearly 5 years, stringing together a feat of longevity that can stand up to almost any era. After Atlanta's 8-6 win at National Parks on April 22, Olson has played in 807 consecutive games, second longest this century, and good health willing, soon stretching into the top 10 all-time. Barring calamity or bad weather, Olson on May 10th at Dodger Stadium will dislodge Gus Sewell from 10th place all-time with his 823rd consecutive game played. 8 days later, Eddie Yost would cede 9th place when Olson posts up at Miami. And on August 2nd, at home against Washington, the great Stan Musial will step aside for Olson's 896th straight game and 8th place all-time. No, Cal Ripken Jr. won't be losing sleep anytime soon. Olson would have to play every day well into the 2037 season to take down the Ironman's 2,632 game record. Yet Ripken broke Lou Gehrig's mark of 2,130 way back in '95, long before planned days off and nouveau tweaks like oblique tears sent sluggers out of the lineup and onto the injured list. This is 2026, the 5th consecutive season Olson figures to be one of the 2 to 5 players to play all 162 games. Few repeat the feat. So why Olson, now 32, an age where the body is typically not impervious to a back twinge or a hamstring seizing? He's got a baseball body that's almost ideal, said Braves manager Walt Weiss, the bench coach, when Atlanta acquired Olson from Oakland in March 2022. He's long and rangy. He's not wound tight. Very loose and whippy and all those things, and obviously can withstand the rigors of this schedule. He's a special one. And that 6'4", 225-pound frame is putting together what could be another very special season. Why Matt Olson is star in this game. Musial was a 3-time MVP. Gehrig and Ripken, 2-time winners. They combined to win 11 World Series titles. Olson can't make such gaudy claims relative to the men of iron above him on the all-time list. Yet, in 2023, the man hit 54 home runs and also led the majors with 139 RBIs. He accrued 7.5 WAR because he is an excellent defensive first baseman. Olson has finished first, second, or third in defensive runs, save the last 6 seasons. That rangy, fungible frame that allows his arms to extend in the batter's box, also a fielder's best friend when a ball is skipped into the dirt toward first base. The defense doesn't get the glory that it should. He's as good a defense first baseman that you'll find, said Weiss. His wingspan creates a lot of outs for us. With the way he stretches, that's not something people are locked into, but we notice those type of things. He's a stud. He's a star in this game. Olson could not approach his 54-homer season the following 2 seasons, yet was metronomic in his production, posting consecutive 29-homer seasons with 37 and 41 doubles and 98 and 95 RBIs. This year, something special might be brewing. Olson already has 7 home runs and ranks second in the major leagues with 17 extra base hits. His OPS is back over .900, and the 17-8 Braves seem poised to rid the aftertaste of their 86-loss 2025 campaign, which broke a streak of 7 consecutive division titles. Olson takes pride in his consecutive game streak and believes that some correlation between his everyday availability and his production, as well as the Braves' consistent excellence. Their culture has long revolved around posting, with third baseman Austin Riley playing 159 or 160 games from 2021 to 23, and in 2022, Olson and shortstop Dansby Swanson were the lone major leaguers to go 162. The best part of it is no matter how your game goes, great game, awful one, the next day is going to be a good one, says Olson. A lot of guys are penciled into the lineup every day. We're not a big platoon squad, and I think it's good for everyone. You know, you're getting 4 or 5, 6 at-bats every day. It's going to help you see more pitches and make those bad games particularly easier to flush and know you've got a new chance at it tomorrow. Continuity is a franchise theme. Olson arrived 1 year after the Braves' 2021 World Series title, famously replacing Freddie Freeman at first and signing a $168 million contract extension after the trade from Oakland ensured Freeman's departure. After series-winning manager Brian Snitker retired after 2025, the club poked its head around and gave Weiss, formerly the Colorado Rockies manager, another chance to run the show. I think Walt is somebody who kind of respected the chain of command a little bit, says Olson. Being bench coach, he was there to help Snit do his role. Now that he's the manager, that role and voice expanded a little bit. We all don't have enough good things to say about Walt. Love the way he goes about stuff, gets us ready, keeps us ready to play. Not that Olson needs much in that department. It's not easy. Even as he approaches his mid-30s, Olson needs to ponder a little bit to acknowledge concessions to advancing age. Yet he knows greater treatment, more intensive self-care, perhaps even injury, may eventually be inevitable. He has a simple mental trick to keep that day further into the future. It takes me a little longer to get loose every day, says Olson, who has 295 career homers and whose career-adjusted OPS of 135 ranks 14th among active players. But I try to stay out of the training room as much as possible. I've seen people who need it every day to go play, and I feel like that becomes people's baselines a little bit. I want to save that for when I need it. There have been times, there's going to be times you're going to need it. You're going to need to get work done. That still belies the maintenance of behind the scenes, the weight room work, the extra swings that keeps Molson on the field and at peak performance. The routines he has behind the scenes to keep his body in shape and play the amount of games he does and be as locked in. It's pretty impressive, says catcher Drake Baldwin. Not many people are doing it like he is. It's all a testament to how much he loves the game and how he goes about it. Working out, keeping the body right to be able to play a 162 for however many years, he's done it straight. It's not easy. And the mental approach at the plate is just as crucial. He's still trying to take the next at-bat, says Baldwin, and make it the most important of his life. Olson is yet another Brave who grew up in the Atlanta area, a laid-back dude very much in his comfort zone. Born 1 year before Atlanta's first World Series title in 1995, he was well aware of the club's standard of excellence as its string of 14 consecutive division titles stretched deep into his childhood. It became the standard, and he expects no less, especially the bit about showing up, being available, and doing your job. Since I was a kid, it was the way the Braves went about it, says Olson. You got your guys, and the team expects you to play. Fans expect you to play. You should expect to play. Ever since I came over here, it's been exactly that. And I think it's great for everybody involved. Italy officials slam shameful Trump envoy proposal on World Cup. Several top Italian officials have rejected a suggestion from U.S. Special Envoy Paolo Zampoli that Italy replace Iran at the 2026 World Cup. With Iran's place at the men's soccer tournament still up in the air amid a war of the United States, Zampoli said he had floated the idea of Italy stepping in to U.S. President Donald Trump and FIFA President Gianni Infantino. I confirm I have suggested to Trump and Infantino that Italy replace Iran at the World Cup. I'm an Italian native, and it would be a dream to see Azzurri at a U.S.-hosted tournament. With 4 titles, they have the pedigree to justify inclusion, Zampoli told the Financial Times. Italy lost on penalty kicks to Bosnia and Herzegovina in their European qualifying playoff on March 31st, failing to qualify for the World Cup for a 3rd consecutive time. According to several top Italian officials, that defeat should be the end of Italy's World Cup hopes. Italy's possible requalification for the 2026 World Cup, which U.S. President Donald Trump's envoy Paolo Zampoli has reportedly proposed to FIFA, is firstly not possible and secondly not appropriate. I don't know what comes first, Italian Sports Minister Andrea Abodi told Sky News. Qualification is on the pitch. Luciano Bonfiglio, president of the Italian National Olympic Committee, or CONI, echoed Abodi's thoughts during an event in Rome. First of all, I don't think it's possible, Bonfiglio said. Second, I'd feel offended. In order to go to the World Cup, you have to earn it. Per Reuters, Italy's economy minister, Giancarlo Giorgetti, called the idea shameful. Will Iran withdraw from 2026 World Cup? If Italy or any other country would have a chance to replace Iran at the World Cup, Iran would first have to withdraw from the competition. But this week, a spokeswoman for the Iranian government said that Iran is fully prepared to play at the tournament in the United States, Mexico, and Canada. Iran was among the first teams to qualify for the World Cup tournament and is scheduled to play New Zealand in Los Angeles on June 15, Belgium in Los Angeles on June 21st, and Egypt in Seattle on June 26. Were Iran to opt out of the tournament, FIFA would have broad latitude to select a replacement. According to Article 6.7 of FIFA's World Cup regulations, if any participating member association withdraws and or is excluded from the FIFA World Cup 26, FIFA shall decide on the matter at its sole discretion and take whatever action is deemed necessary. Arch ties turnaround to seeking more fun. Arch Manning didn't have fun the first half of last season. His words, he played ticked off. The results, not good. Manning wobbled out of the gates in his first season as the Texas starting quarterback. The critiques and hot takes came from all corners. He went from being the best college quarterback since Tim Tebow to college football's first ever flop. That's how the New York Times described it in a piece worthy of the Hyperbole Hall of Fame in a matter of weeks. Penthouse to outhouse at warp speed. Through 5 games, Texas had 2 losses. Manning's performance, while not terrible, was nowhere near what we'd expected from a blue chipper with the most famous surname in college football. Someone with Manning's pedigree surely had undergone countless media trainings in mental coaching to try to prepare him for the pressure, and he probably also picked up on a few family tricks via osmosis, but I'm not sure any amount of prep work could have fully prepared him for the hurricane of scrutiny he faced. These guys are getting paid now, so criticism comes with the territory, now more than ever. And still, few college athletes will ever be under the magnifying glass to the same extent Manning was in 2025. Manning, while talking to reporters earlier this month at Texas, gave a frank self-assessment of his 2025 performance and how it affected him. "I think I could have had more fun. The first half of the season, I was ticked off," Manning told reporters. "I wasn't playing well, and it wasn't fun for me." So Manning opted for a mid-season pivot in mentality that can be summed up in 2 words: screw it. Again, his words. Whatever works. The second half of the season was not without hiccup. He struggled against Kentucky. Texas pulled it out. He struggled against Georgia. The Longhorns got trounced. He didn't play great against Texas A&M. The Longhorns prevailed. Overall, though, Manning made gains in the second half of the season. He finished with a particularly strong performance against Michigan in the Citrus Bowl. So was his mentality change the key, or did he just improve as he gained more experience? The answer may not matter so long as the progress continues. No matter how much he develops, one man can only do so much. For Texas to pursue a national championship, Manning will need sturdier pass protection and more ground support. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 46 minutes after the hour. Texas gave Manning another weapon by adding Auburn transfer Cam Coleman, a star wide receiver, to pair with Ryan Wingo, the team's top wide receiver last season. Week 2 will be a progress report for Manning. The Longhorns will host Ohio State. Manning played poorly for most of the game in a 14-7 loss to Ohio State in last season's opener. That's probably part of what ticked him off. "You obviously take those scars with you and think about them," Manning told reporters. "I'm glad we get another shot at them this year. Just remember to have some fun out there in the rematch." Matt Fitzpatrick is golf's quiet, overlooked star. In a sport that tends to orbit around the biggest names, the fastest swings, and the most marketable players, Matt Fitzpatrick is a little different. Without much fuss, without much self-promotion, and in many ways without a kind of constant attention that usually follows the game's most elite players, he has climbed to number 3 in the official world golf ranking, and that's what makes Fitzpatrick so unique. After winning the RBC Heritage on April 19th, his second PGA Tour victory in the last month, Fitzpatrick now has 4 career PGA Tour titles, including the 2022 U.S. Open. He also has the kind of statistical profile that would make almost any pro envious. And yet, when major championship favorites are discussed before big tournaments, his name is rarely mentioned. Fitzpatrick does not seem especially bothered by that. If anything, he prefers it. "I'm also always happy to be flying under the radar," Fitzpatrick said on April 22 at the Zurich Classic, where he and his brother Alex are playing together for the 4th straight year. Is Alex Fitzpatrick surprised that his brother doesn't get talked about more heading into big events? Not really. You know, your Rorys and Scotties of the world, they're always going to be the favorites going into the majors and stuff. Unbelievable players, he said. Is he surprised that Matt has reached the lofty ranking he now holds? With all the hard work that I've seen him do and all the behind-the-scenes stuff that I've seen, it's hard to say I didn't expect it. "I did expect it," said Alex, who himself won the DP World Tour's Hero Indian Open in March. Golf is a hard enough game. To see him from last year, where he wasn't playing the golf he wanted, to now winning multiple events in the year, I think, yeah, he'll contend at all the majors he wants to this year. Hopefully, I didn't jinx it, but it wouldn't surprise me if I see him pick one off. Mark Blackburn started coaching Matt Fitzpatrick last year at the PGA Tour stop in Hilton Head, right after the 2025 Masters. He sees the lack of buzz and attention focused on Fitzpatrick as a positive. I think in a way it's a big advantage to us to not have that distraction, Blackburn said. He's very happy with doing what he does with his team. We've got a great team of people, just kind of doing our thing and running our process. That word process comes up again and again around Fitzpatrick, and for good reason. He has long been known as one of the game's most detail-oriented players, having kept track of every shot he hits in tournaments while also keeping detailed notes about practice sessions and non-tournament rounds. He studies trends with unusual discipline, but Blackburn offered an important distinction. He's very analytical in the data and the process, Blackburn said. He's not overly technical with his golf swing. That may help explain why his rise has felt so steady, like a measured progression. Fitzpatrick is not trying to win a style contest. He's trying to build a complete game, and right now it looks like he's done it. Through the RBC Heritage, Fitzpatrick ranked third on the PGA Tour in strokes gained, tee to green, third in greens in regulation, and fourth in driving accuracy. Historically, putting has been Fitzpatrick's strength, and as he tried to add length off the tee, Blackburn said his iron play suffered. When the two started working together just over a year ago, that was the first thing they addressed. Now, though, I would argue that his iron game is statistically one of the best, Blackburn said, so he doesn't really have any weaknesses. For the competition, that's a dangerous thing to consider about a player who already has a major championship on his resume. But the numbers back up the coach. Heading into the Zurich Classic, Fitzpatrick ranked 6th in strokes gained, approach the green. The PGA Tour doesn't have a stat that measures composure or grit, but with the crowd chanting USA, USA, USA as Fitzpatrick battled Scheffler in a playoff in the final round April 19th, the Englishman showed plenty of both. He hit a laser-guided 4-iron from 204 yards to 13 feet to set up the winning birdie. He's never had stage fright, Blackburn said, adding, he's got some serious guts when it matters. So maybe Fitzpatrick has been overlooked. Maybe he has not generated as much noise as some of the other stars around him. But that does not mean he has been any less dangerous. At this point, the resume is too strong, the game is too complete, and the trajectory is too obvious to ignore. Matt Fitzpatrick may still be flying under the radar. He just happens to be doing it as the number 3 player in the world. Patriots Vrabel to miss day 3 of draft for counseling. New England Patriots coach Mike Vrabel will miss day 3 of the NFL draft as he begins to seek counseling, he revealed April 22nd. Vrabel did not divulge the nature of the assistance. His statement comes one day after he said he had difficult conversations with his family and members of the Patriots organization in the aftermath of photos of him and Diana Russini, the Athletic's former NFL insider, first surfacing. As I said the other day, I promised my family, this organization, and this team that I was going to give them the best version of me that I can possibly give them. In order to do so, I have committed to seeking counseling starting this weekend, Vrabel said, according to ESPN. This is something that I have given a lot of thought to and is something I would advise a player to do if I was counseling them. I have always wanted to lead by example, and I believe this is what I have to do to be the best husband, father, and coach that I possibly can be. This is not an easy thing for me to admit, but it is one that I know will make me a better person. I appreciate the support that everyone has given me and promise a stronger resolve as a result. In his first public remarks to the media, Vrabel did not answer questions about Rossini, with whom he was photographed on a rooftop at the Ambiente in Sedona, Arizona, ahead of the NFL's annual league meeting in Phoenix. The New York Post on April 7th published pictures of Vrabel and Rossini, who are both married to other people, hugging and lounging poolside in bathing suits. Rossini resigned from The Athletic on April 14th, maintaining that I have covered the NFL with professionalism and dedication throughout my career, and I stand behind every story I have ever published. The Athletic, which is owned by the New York Times, planned to continue its standard review of Rossini's work even after her departure. Vrabel, whose voice carries significant sway in the Patriots' personnel matters, will miss the final 4 rounds of the draft, during which New England is set to make 8 of its 11 picks. Executive Vice President of Player Personnel, Elliot Wolf, and Vice President of Player Personnel, Ryan Cowden, will continue to shape the team's draft strategy in Vrabel's absence. You've been listening to a reading of the USA Today for Friday, April 24th. We read the USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call us at 821-5555. Your reader for this hour has been Linda Lover.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have episode number 5 of We Did Okay, Kid by Sir Anthony Hopkins. Following that, at 3 o'clock is New York Magazine, and at 4 o'clock, a re-airing of today's Buffalo News. Stay with us for these readings and more. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Radio reading serves people who are blind or have a print disability throughout Western New York and Southern Ontario's Niagara Peninsula. From its broadcast studios at 1199 Harlem Road in Cheektowaga, just north of Clinton Street. Almost 40 years and more than 300,000 hours of radio readings to those unable to read printed matter on their own. Our broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Volunteer radio readers broadcast daily readings of newspapers, magazines, and books. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call us at 716-821-5555. You're listening to your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our volunteer radio readers broadcast daily readings 24 hours a day of newspapers, magazines, books, and other printed matter. People who are blind or have a print disability throughout Western New York and Southern Ontario's Niagara Peninsula are provided special reading radios. This year, the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service marks almost 40 years on the air. Our broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Radio Reading Service studios are at 1199 Harlem Road in Cheektowaga. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service website is nfradioreading.org. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555.
Welcome to Independent Perspective, a public affairs presentation of Western New York Independent Living. Our guest today is Kelly Lalka, the Education Program Manager of the Western New York chapter of the Alzheimer's Association, and I'm your host, Ernie Churchwell. Welcome to the program, Kylie.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. And I thought we should probably clear up some misunderstandings about Alzheimer's right at the beginning. I gather senility is a term which is really out of fashion, kind of like calling someone with an intellectual disability retarded or something. It just isn't done these days. But there is apparently a distinction between Alzheimer's and, oh heavens, what's the other term that we mentioned just a moment ago?
Dementia.
Dementia, okay. If you could explain the differential between those two, please.
Yes, I would love to. So I do hear those words, Alzheimer's and dementia, used interchangeably often, but the fact is that they are actually two different terms. So we like to refer to dementia as what we call an umbrella term. It's an overarching term. So the definition of dementia is actually a collection of symptoms that are severe enough to interfere with daily life. So that's the definition of dementia. So dementia is something's happening in the brain, but what's causing it? Alzheimer's is actually the greatest known cause of dementia. So out of
The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents